Okay, so we'll take an in-depth look at the one you sent here and really kind of break down what's going on here. So you've probably done problems kind of like this in the past, but not to this extent. And so just so you can kind of get a feel for what's going on, these are all three lines, but since there's a z involved, we have a three-dimensional space. So instead of just having like an x and a y plane, there's also kind of like this z plane if you were thinking of this coming out uh, from a flat surface. And so you have your x, your y, and then your z is actually pulling away from the page, right? And what's going on is these three lines, what we're looking for is where they all intersect. Where do the three lines hit? But we're doing it in three-dimensional space. And so that's what we're trying to figure out, the x, y, and z coordinate of where those three lines in three-dimensional space are intersecting. So that's where we come up with the matrices, and that's where we come up with our row operations. And so let's go ahead and take a look at this one here. So I'm first going to do the augmented matrix, which basically means I rewrite this without the variables. So let's see, for x, there's an understood 1 in front right there, and then we have a 2. And then my z, I don't have a z, so there's a 0 there. And then we like to draw a line where the equal sign's at. And then we have a 0 here. Then let's see, then we're going to have a 1, a 3, a 1, and a 1 for my second one. Then my third row is going to be 3, -1, -1, -25. So the goal here is to get the first upper left-hand corner to be a 1, and it already is, so that's nice. Then the second goal is to turn the ones below it into zeros. So I'm going to have to turn these into zeros. So looking at row 2, what I'm going to do to row 2 is I'm going to take, if you notice right here is a 1, so if I were to add -1 to 1, that would turn into a 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of the opposite of row 1, which should be like -1 times row 1. So that stands for row 1. So I'm going to multiply the top row by -1. I'm going to add all those results to row 2, and that will be my new row 2. So that arrow kind of indicates what the result is. So my result is going to be, that's what I'm replacing as row 2. Row 2 will now be the opposite of row 1 added to the original row 2, and now that's my new row 2. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll look at the bottom row in a second. So the top row, nothing's going to change there. I'm not going to do anything to that. But this row right here, I'm basically going to multiply the numbers in each column above it by -1 and then add it to that value. So -1 times 1 is -1. Then I add that to +1 right there, and that turns into a 0. Then -1 times 2 is -2. -2 plus 3 is +1, so that worked out nicely. Then -1 times 0 is 0. Adding 0 to anything will just keep its identity. So same thing with this last one. When I multiply 0 by -1, it's still 0. So 0 added to 1, it just stays a 1 right there. So I accomplished my first part of my goal. I wanted to turn that value into a 0. Now I need to turn the bottom one into a 0, but it's a 3. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to multiply that top row by -3 and then add that row to my bottom row. So we're going to take -3, we're going to multiply it by the first row, then we're going to add it to row 3, and that will be my new row 3. And so here we go. So -3 times 1 is -3, added to 3 is 0. -3 times 2 is -6. -6 plus that -1 is a -7. And then those are zeros, so nothing's going to happen there. So I can multiply them by -3 and then add them below, but those are just going to stay the same. So nothing's going to happen because of the zeros that are there. Okay, my next goal is to turn this into a 1. And once again, I just kind of got lucky. It already is a 1. Okay, so now my next thing is going to be to turn this into a 0. And so we're going to do the same thing we kind of did here, but this time we're going to use row 2 to help us do this. Because see, that's a 0 right there, and so that won't affect my 0 down here. I want these to stay zeros, so I'm going to have to use row 2 to turn this into a 0 right here. And so I'm going to have to multiply row 2 by 7 and then add it to row 3 to turn that to a 0. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to multiply 7 times row 2. I'm going to add that to my row 3, and that will be my new row 3. And I'm going to go ahead and bring that all over here and write that. So the first 2 rows are going to stay the same. We're not going to do anything to those. Okay, so we're just focused on the bottom row. So I'm going to multiply this by 7 and add it to this. Well, 7 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 7 times 1 is 7. 7 plus negative 7 is 0. 7 times 1 is 7. 7 plus negative 1 is 6. And then 7 times 1 is 7. 7 plus negative 25 is negative 18. All right, so we're almost done. We have one more thing we need to do, and we haven't actually had to do this until now, so I'm glad we're going to see this. We need to turn this into a 1. So all my diagonals have been 1 so far, which is good. But if it isn't, what you do is you just divide the row by that value to get it to turn into a 1. So I'm going to have to divide row 3. So I'm going to take row 3 and I'm going to divide it by 3, and that'll be my new row 3. So let's see, I still have a 1, 2, 0, 0. And I have a 0, 1, 1, 1. And now I'm gonna have a 0, 0. So I'm sorry. I don't know. Why did I say divide by 3? I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Divide by 6. I don't know why I had 3 on my mind. Okay, so we're gonna divide by 6. Sorry about that. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. Negative 18 divided by 6 is negative 3. Okay. Sorry about that little gaffe there. All right. So now the last thing we do is a thing called back substitution. So we rewrite this back into the equation format. So this would be x plus 2y equals 0. That's the first row right here. That's this. Then the next one would be y plus z equals 1. I got that from right here. And then the last one right here is just going to be that z equals negative 3. So you just put the letters back where you have numbers other than 0. Okay? And so this is your x column, y column, and your z column, right? So that's why I got x plus 2y equals 0, y plus z equals 1, and then z equals negative 3. And then what we do is we know what z is, so now we'll plug it in here and figure out that y plus z, which is negative 3, equals 1. So then we're going to add 3 to both sides, and we figure out that y equals 4. And then now that you know z and y, we can, well, I guess I just need to know y to figure out x. X plus 2 times, and we figured out y is 4 equals 0. So then x plus 8 equals 0. And so then when we subtract 8 from both sides, we're going to get x equals negative 8. And then there's a couple different ways you can list your solution set, but they're wanting us to put it as an ordered pair. So you just list the values in alphabetical order. So it's going to be x first, then y, and then z. And there you go. So I would probably go try a couple of these examples. They do take a little bit of time, but they're, I don't know, they're kind of fun. They're kind of like a little puzzle or whatever, but um, hope that helps.